Welcome to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sara Miley, an IFS-informed trauma recovery coach. This episode's mission is to diminish stigmas through my personal journey, to bring resources to the trauma community, and to feature services that I offer to support survivors around the globe. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sara Miley. I'm an IFS-informed trauma recovery coach, and I'm a consultant and founder of my new system, Personalized Trauma Healing System. And this is a new program trademarked and designed specifically to work with trauma survivors on lifestyle design. And today I thought we would just jump in a little bit, just for a few minutes, and talk about what lifestyle design is and why it's so important specifically to trauma survivors. So first and foremost, lifestyle design is an intentional way of living. This is a human being taking their life, taking their inventory and going, what's working, what isn't, what are my goals, where do I want to be, how would I like my day-to-day life to look, right? And that's basically kind of lifestyle design in a nutshell. This involves a lot of different things. I call them pillars. So you'll hear me use that word, pillars of lifestyle design. So this is going to be the psychological pillars. Where do you want to be with your mental health? Where do you want to be in your awareness, in a mindfulness journey? Are you interested in mindfulness? Are you looking to grow deeper in the expansion of your mind and awareness of who you are? Is there something that's calling you to heal from specific traumas, from incidences that happened that are holding you back? Other pillars would be, physical, emotional. Where do you want to be emotionally? Some people are very okay being very high functioning, high emotional people. Some people are okay with being more even keeled, and some people are on one side or the other, and they want the other. They want to learn how to regulate their emotions a little bit more and be less emotional and have their emotions rule their world a little bit less. And some people who are more even keeled are very interested in getting to know what are some of those extreme emotions. How does it feel to be really, really, really over the top excited? Things that they don't necessarily have access to, right? And so these are things that you can build into your lifestyle design. These can be things that you're working toward, pillars and goals and aspirations that you are actively pursuing and working a system to be able to get to that place. For physical, this involves sleep. This involves your sex life. This involves eating and activity. There's also the pillars of social life. Where are you with the depth of your friendships? Are you interested in going deeper? Are you okay with having a lot of friends that are very surface? Are you okay with just a couple of deep relationships and not having a lot of surface level? Are you here or here and you want to be here or here? And anything in between. Obviously, I'm skipping all the gray areas. I'm kind of doing extreme to extreme just to give some examples. And then from there, there's other things that are involving your goals, your dreams, your career, where you want to live, what your family unit looks like. I have a lot of clients that are working through areas of their life, and they're realizing that a particular relationship that they've been involved in, even a marriage, that is just not working for them, and they want to move forward from that. They want to be able to find healing, and they want to pursue something different. This is also happening in some of my clients in their careers. They're going, why am I still at this job? Or why have I known that this job has been my purpose for a long time and I haven't pursued it? I need to go back to school. I need to get my master's. I need to go get a certification so I can do this or that or the other. And you get to design that, right? Like, this is thinking of all of this as just being your life. It's your career. It's your relationship. It's your marriage. It's your parenting style. And really taking inventory of and stock. A lot of people can recognize where they are with something. So if you ask someone, how have you been sleeping, for instance? They can tell you, I stay up too late at night. I wake up in the middle of the night. I have night terrors. When I wake up in the morning, I feel groggy. When I wake up in the morning, I feel ready to go. I oftentimes wake up at 7 a.m. and I'm just like off about my day, and it's great. I feel like I don't get enough sleep. I maybe sleep too much. I feel like I get a really good amount of sleep, about 7 or 8 hours a night. They can generally tell you where they are. That's not always true, especially for trauma survivors, because some areas they just have a hard time kind of creating an inventory. But for a lot of people, they could name something like where they're at. This is what I do on a regular basis. This is what my sleep habits look like. I have to take a sleeping pill. I have to take melatonin. I fall asleep with the TV on. I fall asleep listening to podcasts. I sleep better after sex. They know these things about themselves. And then where more people tend to get blocked is when you go, okay, is that ideal for you? What does your ideal actually look like? What would you like your sleep life to look like? And then you sometimes hear crickets, right? Because people are like, oh, I'd never really thought about that. Taking inventory of where you want to be is a lot different of taking stock of what you already have. And if there's really no awareness, you go, oh God, I've never really thought about that. How do I sleep at night? I don't know. Like, what time do I actually go to bed at? I'm not really sure. I got to think about that. And that may just be a lack of awareness, right? So they can become more aware a little bit easier, then they can sit down and dream and think about what their ideal is. And I'm kind of picking on sleep a little bit today. But if you told me that your ideal, after thinking, you kind of came up with, this is what I'd like the inventory of my sleep life to look like. I would like to go to bed before 11 o'clock every night because I really think that getting 7 hours of sleep is better for me. And I have to get up at 6 a.m. for work every day. Really thinking about where they want to be for their future, how they would like that sleep to transform. I'd really like to get off of the Ambien, or I'd really like to stop taking melatonin. I don't want to fall asleep with the TV on because I heard that's not great for REM sleep. I know that drinking tends to make me fall asleep faster, but then I feel like I don't sleep as well and I wake up in the morning much more groggy. So I think I probably need to kind of nix that. And they kind of start thinking about all of these things of how they would like sleep to actually look in their life. And this is a quick little moment into them like dreaming. Well, what would ideal look like for me? And we're only just talking about something simple as sleep. But when you translate this into other pillars of lifestyle design, now it's like, what would you like your sex life to look like? What would you like your social life to look like? If you think about something like sleep and you're realizing, when I go out with my friends, I tend to drink too much and then I come home and I have a hard time sleeping and then I feel like crap at work the next day and I'm not performing my best and then I feel bad about that. I have a really difficult inner critic who kind of berates me about my low performance, but it was really because I went out with these friends and they're not such great influences. Now you're talking about multiple pillars. You're talking about sleep, you're talking about work productivity, you're talking about your social life and what kind of friends and influences you have around you. You're talking about alcohol intake, you're talking about what you eat. You start kind of thinking about the fact that all of these are so connected. And that is why for me lifestyle design is one of those most important things. Really being intentional about how you want to live in multiple areas actually gives you freedom to just live it, to just go out and go live that life that you really, really want because you realize that everything is interconnected. So then when you're out with those friends and you realize that they're not such a great influence and you're kind of taking that inventory on your friends and you're being really aware of it, next time you go out with them, you're going to have a deeper expansion and a larger internal wisdom that's happening while you're watching how you behave around them. Why do I just kind of let them kind of dictate how our night goes? Why don't I say, hey guys, at 8 o'clock, I'm going to go. So I'm just going to kind of have a quick meal and leave. I'm not going to go to the bar afterwards with you guys. Why can't I do that? And then maybe you come back and you're working with your coach going, those friends popped up the other night again. And I realize that it's the really hard part for me is telling them no and setting a boundary that I can't go out and continue drinking with them, but I did want to see them. Like I did enjoy dinner. It was really great. And we can dig into that, right? And then we can realize, well, what's the issue with the boundaries? Why is it so hard to say no to these particular friends? Because you're realizing the link that's happening with these people on your sleep, on your work productivity, and ultimately on the dreams for your goals and your careers down the line and where you want to go. You're waiting for that big promotion, but 3 times a week you're having really low productivity. That promotion is probably going to start to elude you pretty quickly as someone else comes for it, comes after it, who's willing to do the work because they have good boundaries and they can get to bed early and not go out drinking with a bunch of friends that are not bad influences. So when you realize that all of this is interconnected and you start to realize this awareness of where you're at, and then you start to kind of get creative and kind of dreamy and intentional about where you want to go, this is where stuff like this crops up. Well, wait a minute. Why do I even care if I'm productive at work? I don't want that promotion because I don't even want to be there. Interesting. That's data, right? That's information. We can use that. I don't know why I can't say no to these friends. I guess I never have boundaries with anybody. Like it makes me sweat just thinking about having a boundary with someone. Interesting. Is that something you'd like to work on? Now we're able to find areas and what we call blocks, especially for trauma survivors, because these would be trauma blocks. Well, I could never speak my mind growing up, so I never developed healthy boundaries because I would get in trouble, or worse, if I said anything about what I liked or what I didn't like or what I needed or what I wanted, right? Ah, okay, that's a trauma block with these friends then. So these friends are trying to rope you in and you're just trying to stay cool and to be around them. Maybe you're living out some kind of high school fantasy of being, the cool kid because you were really bullied or sexually assaulted in high school and you were kind of like this outcast. Okay, we're going to go back and now we can work on that because now we see how it's affecting all these areas of your life. Wait a minute. So you're not interested in getting a promotion at work. It doesn't mean you don't want to be productive, right? Like you always want to do your best wherever you are, in your life. But wait a second, that just opened a brand new door for us to talk about a different pillar about career. What do you mean you don't care about the promotion? Like what does that mean? Isn't this, how you're feeding your family? Is this not a job that you enjoy? Oh, you have a different dream. Oh, why aren't you pursuing that dream? Then we find all of the blocks that are lined up, the fear, the shame, the lack of self-worth. You don't think that you're worth it. You don't think it can happen for you. You were always told, that you're never going to amount to anything. So you just took the first job that said yes to you and you realize that you're there for all these years and you want to do something different, but you don't know how. Now we've unlocked more keys to more pillars. And so that interconnectedness is really, really important. So this is where having a coach, having someone who can sit by your side and kind of dig through all of this thing. So all of this that I just kind of spewed, and I know I kind of went down a lot of little rabbit trails, but this often happens, in coaching sessions, specifically around lifestyle design. But what we kind of started with was sleep. I just ask a simple question about what your sleep looks like and what your ideal sleep would look like. And we found all these other pockets of lifestyle design, from emotional and your trauma as a child, your trauma in high school, your lack of ability to set boundaries and to say no, and why that's so scary. We found fears about your dreams, about pursuing your passions. We found some shame interlaced in there. All of that happened because we were talking about a pillar of lifestyle design of sleep. And we went really simple so that I could show you kind of how that expanded into all these other areas and why everything is so connected. So, lifestyle design in general is kind of your day to day living, what you want your exercise to look like, what you want your eating habits to be, your drinking habits, boundaries, emotions, talking about your mental health status, meditating, mindfulness, your therapeutic integrations that you use for tools to help calm you when you get dysregulated. These are powerful to sit down and think about all of them. They can be quite overwhelming, but when you realize that they're all connected, you're more willing to take a look at one kind of zoomed in like your sleep because if it goes in other different ways, your coach is just getting more data about you. We're making more notes now and we're able to see that this is really impacting this and this is impacting this. And what is your ideal? Well, I've never thought about it. What is your dream job? I've never thought about it. Now's the time. Let's talk about it. Let's think about it. Let's make sure that you're in a place because something like your job, for instance, if it's not your dream job, if it's not something that you're passionate or purposeful about, we can talk deeply about that in a really intentional way because something like work where you're there for 40 to 60 hours a week, maybe with or without a commute also in there, it's taking time away from who you want to be. And maybe you start to notice a little awareness when you're in meetings, at a job that you don't particularly like, that maybe you're dissociating quite a bit. You're losing a lot of your somatic connection with yourself because you don't want to be there. Your boss yells at you a lot. That reminds you of when your dad yelled at you. And so you're dissociating. You're going home, you're drinking wine, you're eating, binge eating food because your boss was yelling at you again. This doesn't sound like a healthy environment, especially for a trauma survivor who's gone through something like being abused by their father. And now you have kind of an abusive, verbally abusive boss that is triggering you on a day to day basis. So I just want to go over with you a little bit about what we call the window of tolerance. Some people also call this the window of capacity. I like both terms, so you'll hear me use them interchangeably. This is a slide from NICAM. I did not design this. It's just my favorite way of showing the window of tolerance. You can find many of these if you Google, but this is from NICABM. And this is showing you here this middle section is called your window of tolerance, right? This is where things feel really well, right? You're able to cope with things. You're feeling calm, but you're not sleepy. You're alert, but not anxious. Okay. And this is kind of where you want to live in your window of tolerance or window of capacity right here, right? But throughout the day, things are going to happen, right? There's going to be some moments of dysregulation. If you're a trauma survivor, you know exactly what I'm talking about by hyper and hypoarousal, which we're going to jump into in a minute, but dysregulation in general, where you just don't feel right anymore. And a lot of trauma survivors don't don't be nervous to hear this word dysregulation because a lot of us live here. We live in these states of this dysregulation, and so hard for us to even find a window of capacity. It's really small, it's really narrow, or it's not even accessible at all. So that window of tolerance, you can go to dysregulation in a hyper aroused state or dysregulation in the hypo aroused state, right? And your dysregulation in the hyper, this is kind of that agitation. You're feeling anxious, you're starting to get revved up. This is where anger can pop in. You're not totally out of control at this point. You're not in a total aroused state, but you don't feel comfortable. You don't feel right. You don't really like what's happening around you, and you don't really know how to fix it. And you don't know how to control it in your internal world, right? The external is having a lot of effect on the internal. Down here, the dysregulation on the hypoarousal side, right? This is when you're starting to feel really shut down. You're getting a little spacey, maybe dissociating a little bit. You're not totally out of control, but again, you don't feel like you're in that window of tolerance. You've gone to this other side now where you're just sluggish, you're tired, you've lost that calm, and you've actually gone into a really low state. Now, outside of this dysregulation, I'm just going to talk briefly about the hyper and the hypoarousal. This is when you've dysregulated so much that now you're feeling the extreme emotions, the extreme anger, extreme anxiety. You're feeling really out of control. Something is very frightening, very threatening. You're super overwhelmed. This is where your fight, flight, freeze kind of comes in, right? You've got to do something to stop the situation that's happening internally and or externally. In the hypoarousal down the very bottom, this is where those extreme things are also happening, but in the hypo state, right? So this is now a lot of dissociation. You're completely zoned out. You're totally numbed. You can't feel things emotionally or physically. Time is completely being lost from you. You're just in a really deep frozen state. This is also where you might flop, you might faint, you might start to feign death. Those are some other of the four F's that aren't always necessarily spoken about. Something is happening inside of your body, but you have lost control. It's completely taken over in the hypo aroused state. So I'm going to kind of talk about these three here with lifestyle design. So we're just going to kind of come back here and just talk briefly about the three, the window of capacity in the middle, and then the dysregulation on the hyper and the hypo state. Okay. And the reason that lifestyle design is super important here is there's a couple of reasons. So let's just kind of power through some of these so you can get a better idea, especially for trauma, or specifically for trauma survivors. This technically applies to everyone because everyone gets dysregulated, but trauma survivors have to deal with their trauma triggers on a regular daily basis. And so that's specifically who I'm targeting in this discussion here and what I work with, who I work with specifically with lifestyle design. But this is why it's so important, right? So if you have a very narrow, very small window of capacity and large capacities of dysregulation that are accessible and constantly being accessed by your body and by your mind, your window of tolerance can grow. You can expand this window of tolerance. Okay. And I want you to picture, still being picturing that picture, but I'm going to use my fingers to kind of show this. I suppose I could show it in a different way. I'm going to use my fingers to kind of show this. And I want you to be picturing that one from NICAM that I just love so much. It's just so pretty. I like it because it's colorful. I just think it shows a great. There's also this has to do with polyvagal as well. So if you look up these different arousal states, you're going to learn about the dorsal ventral, the parasympathetic, the sympathetic nervous system. But I like the window of capacity or window of tolerance. So with your window of capacity, if it's very small, Things like lifestyle design is actually expanding and opening a larger window of tolerance. Let's use a bookmark. So this is a word, it says calm, right? And so this is going to be your window of tolerance. And if it's very, very, very small, it's going to be an even bigger problem. But I want you to imagine that a window of capacity could be my entire face, right? So here you're feeling okay. You woke up in the morning, you didn't have a horrible night's sleep. The kids are not super grumpy. You get them off to school and then you head off to work. And then boom, your boss yells at you. And now you're going into this fight mode. You are going into this place that is just unhealthy. And you don't really necessarily have the tools to get yourself out of it. You've just got to kind of live with it. You've got to live with this fact that you're in this hyper aroused dysregulation state. Maybe you even go all the way up into a hyper arousal. Now you are neurochemically flooded. You've got adrenaline going on. Your cortisol levels have shot through the roof, and your brain is just going crazy trying to get you to a safe place because it's completely and totally activated, totally triggered by what happened at work. But in that dysregulation state, you need tools to kind of bring you back into that window of capacity. So you finally get in here. Hours go by, hours later, maybe you have something good, chocolate brownie that makes you feel better, and that brings you back into some regulation, right? And you go back to work and then you're realizing that you're just not really happy here and you don't have any friends and your coworkers don't really like you and you're feeling really lonely. Maybe that even takes you down here into a hypo dysregulation. You're coming down here and you're realizing that this just isn't the place you want to be and you're feeling a little depressed about it. And then boom, 5 o'clock comes, you go to pick up your kids, you're in this regulation state, you're in this window of capacity. So now let's say that you're well resourced during the night. You're getting a really great night's sleep. You're going to a job that you really, really like. Now your window of capacity is maybe this big. You have a stronger ability to access joy, ease, purpose, pleasure. You're enjoying things. You're able to connect with your children. You're having good relationships with good, healthy friends. You're setting good boundaries for yourself. You're working out. You've got endorphins going. You're meditating. You're feeling very mindful, very aware. You've grown this, and this takes a lot of work, but it is possible. You've grown this. Now you're waking up in the morning and you're already kind of like right here and you're feeling good and everything's really going well. And this is still happening throughout the day. Things are happening, someone cuts you off, someone beeps at you. Maybe someone at work kind of hurt your feelings and they said that color didn't look good on you, but you didn't go into a big, fat shamed kind of thing. You just realized, okay, we're going to just kind of stay here. And you're just doing this all day long. It's still happening, but notice that you're not dysregulating until way up here. So what used to be so what used to be a dysregulation, all of this used to be dysregulation. Oops, I flipped it the wrong way. Sorry. All of this used to be dysregulation. And now you're staying regulated. Your nervous system is not neurochemically flooding. You're going up and down, and things are still happening, and people are still bothering you. And maybe you even hit a trauma trigger and you do come out, but now you've got great tools to bring you back down. And then when you get out of work, you go for a run, and then you're picking up the kids and you're having a great night of homework. And then one of the kids gets sick, and you're thinking, I can't deal with this. I'm all by myself as a single parent. But you remember you can bring yourself back into the window. This window of capacity being bigger and wider and more expansive is happening based on the life that you are designing for yourself and that lifestyle design with those different pillars. Having access to a therapist on a regular basis or a coach, some mental health support. If you have a mental health disorder, if you've got something that's not treated, finding a proper medication that makes your window of tolerance much, much bigger, right? So now all of these things that used to dysregulate you and hyper or hypo arouse you are now still technically inside of your window of capacity. And for me, this is where my passion of helping people, especially trauma survivors who have a very, 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 very narrow window of capacity when they first start their healing journey. They are constantly living in activation. They are constantly in a dysregulated state. They don't know how to bring themselves back into a regulated state because they're not there enough to even know what that is. I work with clients who have no idea what actual love feels like. I work with clients who do not understand what safety feels like. They are trying to find moments where they can remember being safe. They are trying to bring a safety and a safe place to their mind so that their brain can kind of start to recognize it when they are safe. First, we have to establish some kind of bodily safety safety because they've never even explored safety in their body, safety in their home, safety in their mind. And so that window of capacity for trauma survivors is so narrow that they live in a constant dysregulated state. And I know all the trauma survivors are going, yes, that sounds like me. And I understand that. And so having the trauma recovery coaching aspect, where when you get dysregulated or when you get hyper or hypo aroused and you're outside, totally outside of your window, which does still happen. It still happens with me. This is not something that you just magically grow this big window and now you're just totally fine the rest of your life. Absolutely not. But when you're dysregulated, having the tools to bring yourself back into your window, super helpful. But another thing that you can be doing while you are learning those tools and resources to regulate yourself is to grow your window of capacity in general. So now, when you are dysregulating, here, it's not even a dysregulation because you're so well resourced with self-care, with self-focus, with a intentional way of living your regular day-to-day life, that you have created beauty and joy and peace and abundance. And now you're in a regular mode of thriving. And it's not even as scary when you dysregulate because you've got tools to bring you back in and you know more about what this feels like. Because if it's super narrow, maybe just this top part up here where it says breathe, stay, and rest. This is a bookmark that I made for myself a long time ago. It's literally a piece of cardboard with 3 staples holding it together. I just grabbed it from one of my books over here on the bookshelf. But this window, if the window is only this small, everything is just constantly dysregulating you. And I think I actually have another bookmark that is more narrow. Let me see if I can do this for us. Okay. I knew there was one in here. So this might be a non-trauma survivor's window of capacity, can always grow. Like I said in a video not long ago, even 9s and 10s on the joy scale know that there is always more joy and more happiness to be accessed, right? But imagine this being the window of capacity. Yes, it's another bookmark that I made myself a long time ago. Dare to dream is what it says. It's stapled, guys. I'm with the arts and crafts. I'm not so much with the arts and crafts. I'm more about people and psychology than I am arts and crafts, but this was a cheap way to make some bookmarks. So if this is your very narrow, as a trauma survivor, your window of capacity, and this is what a regular person is, you can both grow them. You can grow that window of capacity on either side. It can expand. It's always expandable. And that is why for me, the pillars of lifestyle design and working with trauma survivors on lifestyle design is such a passion for me. It's something I've always been very intentional. I was very young when I started making some really big decisions about my life, about what I wanted to be, where I wanted to live. That I wanted to have a child very young, that I didn't want to go to college, that I wanted to move to New York City, just all of these hopes and dreams and goals. And I always found a way to kind of ascertain them. And I'm not quite sure why some of those things were so important for me, but intentional living has just been something I have been personally passionate about for decades. And to be able to bring that now to people like myself, like other trauma survivors who have similar struggles, who have windows of capacity that have been stolen, have been thwarted by abusive people in their life. I understand all of that. And I think that it's so important to take back control in these different pillars: your mental health, your physical health, your emotional well being, all of these important places where you can say, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to do the work and I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to be purposeful and intentional in my life. I'm going to find my passions. And sometimes, literally, I mean, finding your passions. There's so many trauma survivors, they have no idea what their passions are. I know that's something I struggled with. Who am I? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Because I just thought I needed to take care of people all the time. And I was running out of people to take care of because I have cut off a lot of abusive people in my life. And my son's getting older, doesn't need me so much. And I thought, like that was my main purpose in life. And so now I've been able and gifted the ability and the time to sit and think about what I really want. And that was really terrifying for me 6, 7 years ago when I started a really important journey of figuring that out for myself and making the healthy lifestyle design choices now and being intentional now has really set myself up to where I'm able to go for my future. And I love being able to work with my clients on areas that have been holding them back. Binge eating disorders, binge drinking has been a big thing. I think really since the pandemic, specifically too, a lot of especially Americans I know really fell back on liquor during the pandemic, where getting out and finding healthy social life now, actually post pandemic, has got a lot of people questioning, like, do I even want to see the friends that I used to have because they've grown so much during the pandemic? So kind of revamping your social life, realizing that the patterns of your eating, sleeping, exercise, social, sexual health, all of these things that we've mentioned today and how interconnected they are. I think there's so many people also post pandemic that are questioning their careers and going, why am I still at this company? Why haven't I started my own company? Why haven't I gone back to that art that I love? People are starting to look into having hobbies again. We're remembering that hobbies are important for adults. Finding avenues of creative play is important for adults to have adult play. So people are going back out to paint nights and doing pottery and all kinds of just, joining soccer leagues or pick up basketball leagues and just having something that they can say, this is mine, this belongs to me, and this is really fun. And it's going to look different for everyone. And that's why I've customized things the way that I've customized. And I want to be able to work one on one in a very committed, very intense kind of 12-week program with clients because there's so much customization to happen. First of all, you're going to have different trauma blocks, you're going to have different triggers from other people. You're also going to have different hopes and desires. I might have just said a pickup basketball league, and half of you, 50% of you might have gone, ew, that's someone's hobby, no, thank you. And then when I said pottery, the other half was like, oh God, I could never sit and make pottery. I mean, it's have you seen my artwork? And I actually did do pottery for a while. And it was actually really, really fun. So I'm not trying to dig on pottery. But finding something that actually works for you, what lights you up. It can be pickup basketball or pottery, both or neither, and that's fine. And I think that's where the personalization and the customization comes in my work in the personalized trauma healing system and working with trauma survivors on lifestyle design. And that's why it's so important. So I love helping trauma survivors with tools, with resources to regulate themselves when they are dysregulated. But even more so, I'd like to help trauma survivors to grow that window of capacity, that window of tolerance, so that they're not even as dysregulated in areas where they would have been dysregulated. And that's working through trauma triggers. That is part of the trauma recovery, part of the trauma healing. And it is possible because things that used to dysregulate you are just simply not going to dysregulate you anymore because you've broken that tether, that emotional tether that's been lingering. It's because you've done the work. It's because you've grown your tolerance and you don't have to go outside of your window any further when something happens that used to trigger you and set you into a hyper or hypo aroused state. This is all possible. I know because I'm sitting here and I'm living it. And I've gone from here, I've gone to here, and I'm working to here, and I'm working on expansion even more. And that is, it's for me, it's not possible without support. And I'm very, very blessed for my support. And I'm also very, very blessed to be able to be people's supports. And that's what the personalized trauma healing system is all about. And that's why lifestyle design is so important, especially for trauma survivors. So I just want to end there with just a quick reminder that healing is possible, that help is always available. All you have to do is reach out and ask. I'm going to have a bunch of links below. Personalizedtraumahealingsystem.com is up and going. There is a free assessment that's available. It takes just a few minutes to just kind of see where you are in your lifestyle design and how I might be able to help. There are free webinars available. They have started already this month. We've already had our first one by the time that this is aired. The next one is coming up on a Saturday. There's some coming up in November, December, and January on the schedule already as well. 30-minute webinar, just just to kind of explain a little bit more about lifestyle design and how I'm helping clients. And this is also for mental health professionals to kind of check out the system in case they want to learn it and teach it and use it in their practice as well with their clients. And then, of course, there is a discovery call if you would like to link up with me to discuss about working one-on-one with me as well. Feel free to email me, Sarah at fullcirclewellspring.com. That's Sara, no H, at fullcirclewellspring.com. That'll be linked up in the show notes below. And I would love to help you grow that window of capacity, have more access to ease, to joy, to abundance, to thriving. We like to say, trauma survivors are not meant to always continue to survive. If you're always in a survival state, it means that you're always in a dysregulated or hyper aroused state. You're not fully thriving yet until you're living most of your life in a nice expanded window of capacity. And you'll notice what that feels like. You're going to notice in that window of capacity, this feels like thriving. This feels easy. This feels peaceful. It's calm, but I'm not exhausted. I'm alert, I'm aware, but I'm not feeling, hyper vigilant. This is where that comes from, having an expanded window of capacity. And so I just want to thank you for joining me today. We'll be back next week with another interview here on the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, subscribe, share, follow, and I look forward to chatting with you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to or watching this episode of the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and follow. For any information that was discussed in this podcast episode, check out the show notes below. Until next time, be well.